What is consciousness? Well, consciousness is like really weird. We are forever locked in consciousness. All we ever know, everything we ever experience, is mediated through consciousness. We are only ever indirectly in touch with a reality out there. So, this also means that there's no certainty. Am I dreaming right now? Is this a simulation? You could be a brain kept alive in a vat and fed with fake electrical impulses or signals that would result in the same appearance of a world you're experiencing right now. Okay, so what do we actually know about consciousness? Well, it's a remarkable fact that Western academia ignored the topic of consciousness until the 1990s. It was considered a fringe topic, and young academics were advised not to touch it. To this day, there's no universally accepted definition of what consciousness is. The best we have goes back to an essay a philosopher wrote in 1974 called What is it like to be a bat? So, consciousness is if it's like to be something. So, yeah, this is a pretty bad definition. Making matters worse, a publication from 2024 counted over 200 different theories of what consciousness could be. It's almost as if every academic working with consciousness comes up with their own pet theory of what this is. So it seems to be safe to say that we have no clue what consciousness actually is. But surely science has something to say here, no? Well, yes and no. Science tells us how stuff works, but science does not tell us what stuff is. This is the job of metaphysics. And actually, confusing the two is a really bad category error. So, currently, we're stuck with discussing the nature of consciousness at a metaphysical level. So, more precisely, the philosophers of mind are debating this issue. So, what about the philosophy of mind? Well, generally speaking, the philosophy of mind is divided into two camps whose ideas could not be more different. So, on the one hand, you have the physicalists, and they tell you that, look, your consciousness is more like an illusion. It's a bag of tricks. You think you have this private inner subjective experience going, but that's a mistake. You are being misled. So it's a mirage. It's not what you think it is. The physicalists will also tell you that you have no free will. How could you? There are only four fundamental forces in the universe. So everything that's happening now depends on what happened before, and the evolution is given through these four forces. And your consciousness isn't part of this. Your consciousness has no causal power. On the other side of the spectrum, we have the anti physicalists. They say, look, perhaps there is more to existence than the physical, and maybe consciousness plays a far bigger role than we thought. Metaphysical idealism is such an idea. So it is worth noting that although physicalism seems very rational, commonsensical, and logical, it's a metaphysical assumption. It cannot be proved or disproved. And very importantly, nothing in science actually tells you that you need to be a physicalist. So, what about idealism? Well, in a nutshell, idealism claims that reality is fundamentally mental. Matter, space, time, these are all derived from some field of transpersonal consciousness. So our objective reality is more like a simulation, a construct. And yeah, there's a long history of idealism in Western thought going back to Plato. So it's really interesting to see that this idea, metaphysical idealism, is seeing a renaissance in philosophy and some parts of science. And it's interesting and important to note that idealism is really hard to understand and grasp rationally. This, although many clever people have tried to write and tell us about how we should think about idealism. So you may say, okay, so what? If the nature of consciousness is merely a philosophical debate, why should anyone care? Well, it turns out that rationality is not the only way to access knowledge. There is also this experiential knowledge which can convey truths which are transrational, which transcend rationality. And this is where a huge blind spot emerges in Western thought. While most cultures always cultivated skills of introspection and interiority, the Western mind was preoccupied with looking outside and decoding the outside world. Remarkably, since the dawning of the human mind, the masters of consciousness have been telling us about the same metaphysical structure of reality. These are the shamans, the mystics, the meditators, and the psychonauts. They all report of non-physical planes of existence and of an intelligence, a cosmic consciousness, or some kind of love that resides behind the things that exist. The masters of consciousness have been telling us that we live inside an idealist cosmos. This now opens up the notion of empirical metaphysics, resolving this tension between rational knowledge and experiential knowledge. So, our sober waking consciousness is just one mode of cognition, and tweaking it allows one to access other planes of existence in this transcendental multiverse we're inhabiting. Trance, meditation, entheogens, pain, or even brain trauma are all ways you can lift the veil and make first-hand experiences of the non-physical reality behind the things that exist. Okay, now you may say, what now? So it seems fair to characterize the zeitgeist as follows. Individually, we're suffering from a spiritual crisis. We've lost meaning. What are we doing here? And collectively, we seem to be suffering from a mass psychosis, and we are destroying ourselves and the planet. Reframing our understanding of the cosmos and ourselves can be an antidote to our civilizational problems, which are rooted in bad assumptions about reality and consciousness. By adopting idealism, we're invited to consider the idea of scientific spirituality. This is a combination of the mastery of the outer world with a transformational inner exploration. We're asked to engage with our own consciousness and look inwards and see what worlds emerge there, what non-physical planes of existence are accessible through our consciousness. It's also a rejection of the cosmic nihilism implied by physicalism and the dogmatism of institutionalized religions. Essentially, idealism invites scientific spirituality, which allows us to re-enchant the universe. If the last couple of minutes gave you an existential crisis, or you believe that everything I've said is total and utter rubbish, please check out more of my stuff. Thanks.